Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, wind screaming past your ears. Below you, a yawning void of failure, ridicule, mediocrity. Your friends warned you. Your parents gave you that look, the one that says, be realistic. You have no credentials, no safety net, no backup plan. And yet, for some reason you can't fully explain, your hand reaches out, not for a parachute, but for wings that don't exist. And still you jump. Why? Why would anyone, sane, rational, grounded, dare to leap with nothing but belief in something they've never done, never proven, never earned? The answer lives in a dangerous, often mocked, almost taboo force, delusional self-belief, a belief so unreasonable, so unfounded, so wildly out of touch with reality that it should implode under the weight of the world, and yet it doesn't. Somehow, those who leap, fueled by nothing but this irrational certainty, often fly. They bend reality. They win, not because they were qualified, but because they refused to accept the truth others agreed on. What if everything you've been taught about knowing your limits, about being practical, about staying grounded, was a quiet form of self-sabotage? What if the truth that keeps you safe is the very thing that's keeping you small? They'll call it delusion. They'll call it arrogance. They'll say you're not being realistic. But here's the paradox no one wants to touch. If you believe in yourself only when there's evidence, the evidence will never come, because you'll never take the leap to create it. So what then? Do you wait for permission from the world? Or do you manufacture your own mythology, fabricate it, wear it like armor, scream it into the void until the void screams back? You see, society admires confidence after success, but before it, it punishes belief. It tells you to know your place, stay in your lane, to not make a fool of yourself. But how do you become great without first being foolish? Imagine you're an artist, painting with no audience, or an entrepreneur, pitching to an empty room, or a rejected writer, clinging to a story no one wants. The world tells you to stop, to move on, to grow up, but the ones who change the world, the ones who become legends, are the ones who pretend they're already there. They pretend so convincingly, they become it. They don't wait to feel confident, they act while terrified. They don't wait for external validation, they validate themselves. They don't ask if they're good enough, they decide they are, and dare the world to catch up. And isn't that in some twisted way the most rational insanity? We are told to chase authenticity. But what if authenticity is just memory? What if the version of you that exists now is based entirely on past limitations? What if to become something greater, you have to lie to your old self? Not because the truth doesn't matter, but because the truth is too small for who you're meant to be. And here's the terrifying, liberating truth you can't unsee. Every breakthrough starts as a delusion. The light bulb was a delusion. Flying machines were delusions. Walking on the moon was a laughable delusion, until it wasn't. So the question is not whether you're delusional. The question is your delusion powerful enough to build a future your past can't imagine? Is your belief strong enough to burn the bridges to who you used to be? Can you lie to yourself so beautifully, so persuasively, that your mind has to obey? Because belief isn't a passive feeling, it's a weapon, a tool, a code you write into your nervous system. But wielding it demands something raw, dangerous, and almost spiritual. You must betray your current reality. And that's terrifying, because to believe in a version of yourself that doesn't exist yet is to let go of the safety that's defined you. So here you stand, again on the edge of the cliff, and maybe, just maybe, what you've called delusion all your life was your soul trying to whisper the future into your bones. But before you leap, ask yourself this: if you had nothing but belief, no skills, no proof, no plan, would it be enough? Could it become enough? Or will you let the noise of logic drown out the signal of your destiny? That is the haunting question that echoes behind every success, every failure, every quiet moment when you wonder if you're meant for more. And that is where the real story begins. Because belief without evidence is madness, and madness perhaps is the only path to greatness. Now, let's uncover what's really holding you back. You were never taught to believe in yourself. You were taught to obey. From the moment you could walk, speak, or color outside the lines, the world began its silent training. It didn't scream at you to become average. It just gently nudged you there. 1,000 tiny corrections, 1,000,000 quiet redirections, each one a small betrayal of your inner compass. Don't dream too big. Play it safe. Be realistic. Don't get your hopes up. Each phrase sounds like love. Each one is a seed of fear. Now, you wake up decades later wondering why it feels wrong to believe in your own potential, why it feels almost arrogant to back yourself fully without proof, why you look in the mirror and still see the version of you that others tolerated, not the one you were born to become. But that discomfort isn't accidental. It's conditioning. Let's go deeper. Carl Jung once wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But what he didn't say out loud, what perhaps he feared, was how rare that privilege really is. Because most people never fight to become. They settle into identities handed to them by family, culture, fear. You were given a mask before you could choose your own face. This conditioning has roots older than modern life. It's wired into our biology. In ancient tribes, believing too much in your individuality made you dangerous. The lone wolf didn't survive. The loud dreamer got cast out. And so safety became synonymous with sameness. Our minds evolved to crave approval, not truth. But here's the modern curse. We no longer live in tribes. Yet we still carry the tribal wiring. You don't need permission anymore. But your nervous system is still waiting for it. The self-doubt you feel, that tightening in your chest when you dare to dream, that inner voice telling you to shrink. It isn't your enemy. It's an outdated survival instinct. It's the ghost of a time when stepping out of line meant death, not disapproval. Friedrich Nietzsche saw through this. He spoke of the Übermensch, the overman, not as a superior being in the physical sense, but as someone who transcends inherited values, a person who invents new meaning in a meaningless world. That's what delusional self-belief is, not fantasy, but rebellion, the refusal to accept the meaninglessness you were given. Think about this. Why is it seen as noble to sacrifice, to suffer, to endure, but egotistical to believe in your own inevitable rise? Because belief threatens the system. Schopenhauer said it coldly. The world is my representation, meaning we do not see things as they are. We see them as we are. But what happens when you see yourself as powerless? You perceive a world designed to crush you. You interpret every failure as proof, every rejection as prophecy. But if you see yourself as limitless, if you inject a level of irrational belief into your worldview, you begin to perceive opportunities that others are blind to. You act bolder, speak louder, take risks others wouldn't dare. And in doing so, you create the evidence that everyone else was waiting for. That's the dirty secret of self-belief. It becomes real the moment you act like it already is. But here's the catch. There is a force working against you. Not just society, not just your brain, but something deeper, existential fear. Jean-Paul Sartre described it as nausea, the raw, dizzying awareness that you are free to choose, to become, to break your mold. That freedom isn't comforting, it's terrifying, because it means if you fail, it's on you. No more excuses, no more systems to blame. Delusional self-belief demands you accept this burden of freedom. It asks you to kill the comfort of victimhood, to bury the identity of the realist, to become the author of your own myth, and that psychologically is a death of your current self-image, a funeral for the safe version of you. That's why your subconscious resists. That's why your dreams scare you, because to become who you could be, you must abandon who you are. So the next time you feel that resistance, that panic when you imagine becoming greater than your current reality, it isn't weakness, it's ego death in progress. It's the old you screaming as it's being replaced. Viktor Frankl believed that man's deepest need is meaning, not comfort, that suffering is bearable if it has a purpose. But what he hinted at, and what the world rarely admits, is that sometimes the most unbearable suffering is to live a life that's too small, not because others made it small, but because you believed them when they said you had no right to make it bigger. And so here you are, with a war inside your own mind, the pull of reason against the push of purpose, the urge to protect your ego against the drive to expand it. Which voice wins? The one you feed. So here's a question that should haunt you. Have you spent your whole life mistaking realism for wisdom when it was just fear wearing a mask? That question cuts. It reveals the lie you've lived, the way you've shrunken yourself to fit into stories that weren't even yours. But don't look away. Lean in. Because now that we've exposed the roots of your doubt, the biological, psychological, and philosophical mechanisms that trained you to play small, it's time to follow that thread further. What happens when people ignore this truth? What does it cost them to stay realistic? You're about to see the unseen damage of a life lived without delusional belief, the slow erosion of the soul. And once you see it, you'll never want to go back. You don't notice it at first. It doesn't arrive like an explosion. It creeps in like fog, quiet, invisible, patient. The moment you start doubting your right to believe in something greater, something bolder, something unreasonable, you don't crash. You settle. You make tiny compromises that feel logical in the moment. You turn down an opportunity because it's not the right time. You silence a vision because it probably wouldn't work. You shrink from a dream because who am I to think I could do that? And with every small retreat, a piece of your spirit goes missing. Not enough to panic, just enough to leave you feeling a little hollow. This is how the death begins. Not of your body, but of your possibility. It's an invisible decay, a life that still functions, still pays the bills, still smiles in photos. But behind the eyes, a flicker gone dim, a quiet ache that grows louder with every year that passes and every chance not taken. You don't just lose belief, you lose yourself. Why? Because the human psyche is wired for coherence. Your brain wants your actions to match your identity. So the moment you start telling yourself you're not that kind of person, not bold, not lucky, not special, you begin to behave in ways that prove that story true. This is called cognitive dissonance, the psychological discomfort that arises when your actions don't align with your beliefs. But here's the twist. Most people don't change their actions. They lower their beliefs to match their behavior. They stop trying, then tell themselves it was never meant to be. They don't get the job, so they decide they were never qualified. They lose the girl, so they convince themselves she was out of their league. This is how identity is built. Not from who you really are, but from who you settle to be. And society applauds it. They call it maturity. They call it knowing your limits. They call it humility. But humility without power is just self-erasure. And knowing your limits becomes a curse when it prevents you from testing them. Neurologically, your brain begins to wire itself around avoidance. The more often you retreat from challenges, the more active your amygdala, the fear center, becomes. You become risk-averse, anxious, frozen. And the longer you stay in that state, the more it becomes your baseline. The mind calcifies, the self-image hardens, the world narrows. Before long, delusional self-belief doesn't just feel impossible, it feels foreign, like something meant for other people. But here's the kicker. Everyone who changed the world started there. The difference? They didn't let it define them. Think of the countless artists, inventors, leaders, and misfits who were laughed at, dismissed, or told they were insane. Their belief had no evidence. Their confidence had no foundation, but they acted anyway. Why? Because they understood the most overlooked truth of human behavior. Belief precedes ability. You don't become great, then believe in yourself. You believe in yourself and in doing so become great. That's not motivational fluff, it's neuroscience. Studies in neuroplasticity reveal that belief alters the brain's wiring. When you expect success, your brain fires differently. It interprets setbacks as feedback, not failure. It pushes longer, learns faster, recovers quicker. Delusional belief is not about ignoring reality. It's about bending it. But what happens when you don't? What's the real cost of staying grounded, realistic, safe? Let's make it painfully clear. You become competent, but never inspired. Real card, but never feel alive. You achieve goals, but never feel whole. And over time, that gap between what you could have been and what you settled for starts to ache like an old injury you forgot how you got. That's the pain no one talks about. We're trained to fear failure, but what we should really fear is mediocrity with potential unspent. We mourn dreams that die violently, but what about the dreams that starve quietly? There is a moment, often in your late 30s or 40s, when the fog begins to lift. You've done everything right, you've followed the rules, but something is missing, something primal, something wild. It's the realization that you've built a life around avoiding your own power, that you've been so terrified of being wrong you never gave yourself permission to be great. And by then the cage isn't made of bars, it's made of evidence. All the years you didn't try. All the proof that you're not that type of person. All the feedback loops of caution and conformity. And now delusional belief doesn't just feel risky, it feels dishonest. Because you've built an identity on the foundation of fear. But here's the quiet, devastating truth. The pain of regret never screams. It whispers every time you see someone living the life you were too afraid to imagine. So you tell yourself stories to cope. That's not realistic. They must have had connections. I just don't have the time anymore. Some people are just lucky. But deep down in the quiet hours, just before you sleep, just after you wake, there's a voice that doesn't believe you. It remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. And that voice is growing louder. That voice is not your ego. It's not your ambition. It's your soul. Starving, screaming, begging to be set free. So now the question isn't, what if I fail? The question is, what if I never try? What if I live a life so safe, so small, so smart, that I die without ever meeting the version of me I was meant to become? You think delusional belief is dangerous? Try living without it. Try silencing that voice for another year, another decade, and then try looking your future self in the eye. You won't be able to, but it doesn't have to end that way, because now that you've seen the cost of playing small, it's time to rebel. There comes a moment in every life where the script must be burned, not edited, not revised, burned. You've been handed a story by your culture, your family, your fears. It's a nice story, safe, predictable, market-tested. It keeps you small enough to manage and just big enough to function. But it isn't yours, and deep down, you know it. So here's the rebellion. You must become the lie before it becomes the truth. Because your current identity is glued in place by your tolerations, the friends who drain you, the excuses you recycle, the habits you justify. Cut those, and the old you begins to bleed out. 2. Speak your delusion out loud. Not once. Daily. Affirmations aren't magic, but repetition is. The brain learns through neuroplastic reinforcement. Every time you speak your future identity aloud, you weaken the wiring of your current one. Say it before you believe it. Say it until belief becomes muscle memory. This isn't lying to yourself, it's reprogramming yourself. Because guess what? You've been programmed anyway. Might as well choose the code. 3. Take one impossible action. Not 10. Not a list. Just one. Apply for something you aren't qualified for. Introduce yourself as what you want to be, not what your resume says. Launch the idea you keep waiting to perfect. That one bold action creates psychological dissonance. Your brain goes, wait, if I'm doing this, maybe I am this. It begins to reorganize its narrative to match the evidence you're now feeding it. This is how belief becomes inevitable, through audacity. 4. Kill the how. This is where most people get stuck. They want a roadmap, a guarantee, a perfect plan. But listen carefully. The how is not your job. The who is. Who are you becoming? Who must you become to attract the how? Every master began as a beginner who acted like a master before they had any right to. They didn't know how. They just knew who, and the world filled in the gaps. Rob 5. Protect your new identity like your life depends on it, because it does. Delusional belief is fragile in the beginning. It's like fire in the wind. One wrong voice, one sarcastic laugh, one "are you serious?" can snuff it out. So protect your energy like it's sacred. If they don't believe in your future, cut them. If they laugh at your ambition, walk away. If they remind you of who you used to be, forget their name. Surround yourself with people who see the myth you're becoming and speak to that version of you, because the old you isn't dying peacefully. It will claw, cry, guilt trip, and beg. It will whisper, don't change, they'll judge you, you'll fail. It's too late. But here's your sword. Delusional belief doesn't beg for permission. It declares war on limitation. And war requires sacrifice. You will lose people. You will lose comfort. You will lose the version of yourself who got you here. But what you gain is sovereignty. And that is worth everything. So here's what you do. Start becoming the lie you wish were true. Walk like the person who already won. Speak like the person who already built it. Dress like the person who already deserves it. And one day, not months, not years, but perhaps tomorrow, the world will look at you and say, of course. It was obvious. They won't remember your doubts. They won't remember your hesitations. They'll only remember the power you chose to embody, long before it was real. And in that moment you will realize, the most delusional thing you ever did was wait this long to believe. Now you're ready. But before you walk away from your old self, there is one final truth, one final realization, waiting in the shadows. A truth so uncomfortable, so empowering, that once you see it, you will never unsee it. It's time to end the myth and become the meaning. You've spent your whole life becoming someone you didn't choose. That's the hidden tragedy. Not that you failed, not that you struggled, but that you became a reflection of everything that was safe, expected, approved, instead of everything that was possible. And now, as the curtain begins to fall on this old identity, the version of you who obeyed, who made sense, who fit the mold, there's only one question that matters. Who would you be if you erased everything you thought was true about yourself? Not improved, not upgraded, erased, wiped clean. No past wounds, no childhood labels, no limitations whispered by insecure people, no inherited fears from parents, teachers, lovers. No more I'm just the kind of person who, because here's the ultimate truth, you are not who you think you are. You are who you decide to become and nothing else. Not a single thought in your head is original. Not a single belief was born without influence. Your fears, inherited. Your limits, learned. Your doubts, echoes of other people's insecurities that you mistook for truth. So what happens if you drop it all? What happens when you stop trying to be someone and instead create someone? You become free, terrifyingly, beautifully free. Because freedom isn't the absence of rules. It's the ability to choose the ones you obey. And for the first time, you get to choose what matters, what you believe, who you are. But that kind of freedom comes with a price. You can no longer blame your past. You can no longer outsource your identity to culture or trauma. You can no longer cling to your story like a shield, because now everything is your fault, and everything is your responsibility. Wiped clean. No past wounds, no childhood labels, no limitations whispered by insecure people, no inherited fears from parents, teachers, lovers. No more, I'm just the kind of person who, because here's the ultimate truth. You are not who you think you are. You are who you decide to become, and nothing else. Not a single thought in your head is original. Not a single belief was born without influence. Your fears? Inherited. Your limits? Learned. Your doubts? Echoes of other people's insecurities that you mistook for truth. So what happens if you drop it all? What happens when you stop trying to be someone, and instead create someone? You become free, terrifyingly, beautifully free. Because freedom isn't the absence of rules. It's the ability to choose the ones you obey. And for the first time, you get to choose what matters, what you believe, who you are. But that kind of freedom comes with a price. You can no longer blame your past. You can no longer outsource your identity to culture or trauma. You can no longer cling to your story like a shield, because now everything is your fault and everything is your responsibility. That's the final evolution of belief. Not just believing in a future self, but in your power to construct that self from nothing. Nothing. From ashes, from ruins, from silence. And in that silence you find the one thing you were missing all along. Agency. Not motivation, not inspiration. Agency. The raw, electric realization that your life has been waiting for you to stop asking permission and start acting like a goddamn creator. Not a follower, not a realist, not a survivor, a creator. Because if belief is delusional, so is fear. If confidence is made up, so is self-doubt. If success is built on stories, then write your own. Don't edit your life to fit a narrative someone else wrote. Burn the plot. Start again. From page 1. Picture this. You walk into a room full of strangers. They don't know your past. They don't know your wounds. They don't know your excuses. They only know what you show them. How do you walk? How do you speak? What do you believe in? Before there's evidence, before there's applause. That is your real self. The version unshackled from biography, unburdened by history. The version that acts as if, until as if becomes as is. The one who doesn't hope. They declare. They embody. They transmit. Because when your belief becomes cellular, when it vibrates through your tone, your posture, your silence, you don't have to convince anyone. They feel it, they mirror it, because the world reflects your inner certainty, always. And if you lack that certainty, the world won't give it to you. It will punish you for waiting. So stop waiting. Stop hoping the world will see something in you that you haven't claimed for yourself. Stop looking for signs or clarity or permission. Start becoming the signal others can't ignore. Start becoming the gravity that pulls opportunities toward you like planets in orbit. Start becoming the version of you that future you will thank you for, while present you trembles and past you screams, because greatness is never quiet on the inside. It's war, it's death, it's rebirth. It's walking through fire while whispering, I'm already beyond it. That is the power of delusional self-belief, not belief in outcomes, not belief in luck, belief in your godlike ability to become whatever you decide, without waiting for proof. Let others cling to reality. You bend it. Let others wait for proof. You become it. Let others fear being too much. You become so much they choke on your name. Because here's the ultimate truth. Delusion is not the opposite of truth. It's the fuel for creating it. Every new identity starts as a story. Every revolution starts with belief in something that doesn't exist yet. Every future worth living in begins with someone becoming the lie they wish were real. And you've waited long enough. So now, the only question left is this. Are you ready to become the most powerful version of yourself before the world believes you're allowed to? Because that version, it's already waiting. Not in the future, not after success. Now, inside you, right here, right now, at the end of this sentence. And all it needs is your permission to become real.